y'all Friday. Hello? Up in the 216. You gotta know it. Hello? Yeah. Hey, look, cause I'm really having, I'm nothing like when I bear arms, who gon' fight you? Whole clique got plenty straps for any dinner like they get dice, keep him in the house if you really like him. I'm the type of bitch that excite him, you gotta do shit for him. He be asking what the price is, that's the difference, you gotta try. You are you and I'm I, he don't put shit above me. He be calling me a sky, somebody better tell another lie. You be lurking, you a spy, they gon' put realest bitch on my tombstone. When I die, I was outcast, so fresh and clean, I move along, I don't need a team. Tell a nigga that I'm not chose, I'm so supreme, I don't need a cheat. Y'all brag on niggas, I regret I hit. Go on the flight, only time I trip, yo pussy loose, he said I got grip. Hoes down bad, ain't no shit. Same hoes can't pay they rent. Same niggas that ain't no shit. Same hoes hate that I won. Same hoes dropped out and quit. Same niggas y'all regret I hit. Same niggas y'all posting pics. Same niggas y'all really love. Same niggas that ain't no shit, bitch.
Imagine a sunny Saturday afternoon. The music's thumping, kids are laughing, and families are coming together to celebrate a new beginning. The grand opening of Glamour Beauty Supply, a dream come true for 27-year-old Aliana Green, a rising star in the Oakland music scene, was supposed to mark the start of something beautiful. People lined up, phones out, ready to capture the moment. Aliana was about to show Oakland and the world that she was more than just a rapper. She was a businesswoman, a symbol of success and a leader. But in the blink of an eye, that dream would shatter, leaving everyone there questioning what had just happened. The sounds of celebration, the music, the laughter, the excitement, were cut short by the sharp crack of gunfire. Chaos erupted. People who moments ago had been dancing, chatting, and shopping for beauty products were now scrambling for safety. Aliana Green, the woman who had spent years fighting her way out of the streets, was gone in an instant. What should have been her greatest moment, a testament to everything she had worked for, became a scene of terror and heartbreak. A single day of celebration ended in tragedy, but it wasn't just any tragedy. It was a tragedy with layers, with secrets that no one could have predicted. Beneath the gunshots, behind the violence, was a story of lies, ambition, and a burning desire for fame. A story that would come to haunt her until her final moments. So, what really happened that day at the grand opening of Glamour Beauty Supply? Was Aliana Green truly the innocent victim that the media painted her to be, or was there something far darker at play? Was it all part of a larger web of deceit that no one could have seen coming? Welcome to City Crime Tales, where we dive deep into the cases that make you question everything you thought you knew. The truth behind this story is more twisted and complicated than anyone could have imagined. If you're ready for a deep dive into a case that shook a community to its core, stay with us. But before we continue unraveling the mystery, I need to ask you one thing. Are you truly ready to uncover the truth? If you haven't subscribed yet, now's your chance. Hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what comes next. Trust me, what we uncover here might just change the way you look at fame, truth, and the cost of survival. Now let's begin. It's time to untangle the mystery of Aliana Green, the rapper who thought she could outrun her own lies. Aliana Green's journey didn't begin in a studio, nor was it birthed in luxury or fame. Born and raised in the tough streets of Oakland, her story was one of grit and raw ambition, far from the glossy tales you often hear about artists making it big. For Aliana, survival was more than just a word, it was a lifestyle. Oakland, a city defined by its vibrant culture and hard-knock reality, is where Aliana's roots were planted. From an early age, she felt the weight of life's challenges. The city streets echoed with struggles, but for Aliana, there was one constant, a fierce love for music. It was her escape, her outlet, her lifeline. It was through music that she could express everything that she couldn't say in words. As a teenager, she began what many aspiring artists do, scribbling lyrics in the margins of her notebooks, pouring every ounce of her pain and hope into her songs. She didn't have a fancy studio or expensive equipment. What she had was a burning desire to be heard and the will to make it happen. She'd record on whatever equipment she could get her hands on, crafting beats and rapping with an intensity that came from somewhere deep inside her. But the truth is, survival wasn't enough. Not for Aliana. The East Bay wasn't just a place to grow up. It was a place that demanded you prove yourself. And in the world of hip-hop, that meant having a story of struggle, resilience, and survival that the streets could believe. She didn't just want to be another rapper. She didn't want to be just another name on the underground scene. Aliana wanted to be a legend. But here's where the story takes a turn. In the world of rap, authenticity is everything. It's not enough to talk about hardships. You have to have lived them. But what happens when your truth isn't enough? What happens when the desire to be seen as a survivor, a fighter, pushes someone to fabricate parts of their past to fit a narrative? In her mind, the line between reality and the persona she was building began to blur. The narrative she constructed was powerful, too powerful to walk away from. So she played her part. She told her story with all the intensity and emotion she could muster. A story of surviving abuse, of fighting back, of killing her abusive ex in self-defense. It wasn't just about the music anymore. It was about living up to the image of strength, of survival, and of triumph. It was about creating a story that would resonate with millions. But what happens when that story isn't true? When the life you're selling is a fabrication, a lie built on a foundation of pain that you didn't experience? Can someone who built their career on lies ever escape the consequences of those lies? The music world was captivated by her story, the survivor rapper who turned trauma into triumph. But could Aliana ever outrun the weight of her own creation? The truth? That was a question nobody was ready to answer. What do you think? Do you think Aliana's journey would have been different if she hadn't chosen to fabricate parts of her story to fit the image of a survivor in the rap world? Would she still have made it big, or was her story a necessary ingredient for success in that world? Drop your thoughts below. This is just the beginning and we want to hear what you think. If you haven't already subscribed, do it now, because you'll never know what case we'll dive into next. Are you willing to miss out on another mystery? Don't regret it later. Aliana Green wasn't just another rapper trying to make it. She wasn't content with being another artist in the Oakland scene, adding her voice to a crowded industry. No, she wanted more. She wanted to be a legend. And in a world where legends aren't made from mere talent but from powerful stories, Aliana set out to create a story so bold, so unforgettable, that no one could ignore her. The result? Her breakout album Zwood Pack. The album was a shockwave that rippled through the hip-hop community. Its cover alone made headlines, a graphic image of a man's head surrounded by smoke, almost hauntingly reminiscent of a murder scene. It was a striking visual designed to grab attention and stir conversation. And that's exactly what it did. But the controversy didn't end with the cover. The lyrics? They were even more provocative. In one of the album's most talked about tracks, Aliana rapped about killing her ex-boyfriend, claiming that she had done so in self-defense. She painted herself as a survivor, someone who had been betrayed by a violent partner and had no choice but to fight back. Her words were powerful, raw, and intense. They told the story of a woman who had gone through hell and come out on top. Her fans, many of whom identified with her story of survival and overcoming hardship, embraced it. The track went viral. People started calling her a symbol of strength, a woman who had turned her trauma into triumph. Aliana became the poster child for empowerment and resilience in the face of abuse. She quickly became the voice of those who felt voiceless, a beacon of hope for women who had been through similar struggles. The album was more than just music, it was a brand. It was a persona. Aliana became a legend in the making. Her story resonated with so many because, for a moment, it felt real. It felt like truth. And for Aliana, that's exactly what she wanted. She didn't just want to be another artist. She wanted to be a cultural icon. But there was one major issue. It wasn't true. Aliana never killed her ex. In fact, there was no dead body, no crime, no bloody confrontation. It was all fabricated. She had taken the most extreme and personal experience she could imagine, the ultimate act of survival, and turned it into a fictional story that she knew would sell. The ex-boyfriend she rapped about wasn't dead. He was alive, living in another state, far from the violent, abusive figure she had created in her music. But here's the thing, the lie worked. People bought into it. They didn't just buy the album, they bought into her story. They didn't just see her as a rapper, they saw her as someone who had been through something that no one else could understand. The music industry embraced her. She was no longer just an artist from Oakland. She was an icon with a story too compelling to ignore. However, this wasn't just about crafting an image, it was a calculated decision. Aliana was risking everything to build a brand based on something false, but in the entertainment world, the line between truth and fiction can blur so easily. The darker and more intense the story, the more people will gravitate toward it. It's human nature. We want to hear the stories that make us feel something. Aliana had figured that out, and she played the game to perfection. She gave people exactly what they wanted. A story of pain, survival, and ultimate victory. But the cost of that decision was far higher than she could have ever imagined. Aliana built her entire career on a lie. The persona she created, the tan to God everyone idolized, wasn't real. She took a painful past and turned it into art. But when art crosses into fiction, it starts to come with consequences. And those consequences, though slow to arrive, were coming. When you live a life based on lies, you're constantly running from the truth. At some point, that truth will catch up to you. And for Aliana, the truth about her fabricated past was starting to unravel, piece by piece. In the world of hip-hop, authenticity means everything. Artists who build careers on fabricated personas are walking a fine line, and eventually the truth will always find its way to the surface. For Aliana, her story was too compelling, too well constructed to just disappear. She had made a choice to create a life out of trauma, but what happens when the world starts questioning whether that trauma was ever real in the first place? In the end, what she had built, her career, her identity, was a house of cards ready to come crashing down. Was it worth it? Was the fame and success worth living a lie that could shatter the very foundation of who she was? She had taken a step too far, fabricating a story that would eventually prove to be her undoing. But could she have lived the life she wanted without this lie? Would her story have ever been heard if she hadn't exaggerated the darkness of her past? And what about her fans? The people who had embraced her as a survivor, who had seen her as someone who overcame the ultimate betrayal. How would they feel when they learned the truth? Would they still support her, or would they feel betrayed by the very woman who had given them so much hope? Can you imagine what it would feel like to build your entire life on a lie? Would you have made the same decision if you were in her shoes? Let us know in the comments. Do you think Aliana's story would have been as impactful if it was based on the truth? Or was it the lie that made it so powerful? You don't want to be left behind when the next truth bomb drops. Subscribe now or risk missing out on another shocking story. July 13, 2024. It was supposed to be the day that would cement Aliana Green's place in Oakland's history. After years of clawing her way to the top, fighting for every inch of success, she was about to show the world that she was more than just a rapper. She was a businesswoman, a leader, someone who had turned her pain into power. For Aliana, the grand opening of Glamour Beauty Supply wasn't just about selling beauty products. It was a symbol of triumph over adversity. A chance to show the world that a young woman from the streets of Oakland could rise above it all and create something meaningful for her community. The store, located in the heart of Oakland, was a vibrant reflection of her journey, a place where beauty, culture, and community came together. Aliana had worked tirelessly for months to make it perfect. She used the fame she had built in the music industry to fund her dream, creating a space where local families could find quality beauty products without the high prices and inconvenience of traveling outside their neighborhoods. It was a day filled with energy. The music was blasting, people were laughing, children were playing, and families strolled through the aisles, excited to be part of something new. Aliana's vision was coming to life, and she had every reason to believe that this day was the beginning of a new chapter. She greeted guests, posed for pictures with fans, and celebrated with the people who had supported her along the way. The feeling in the air was one of hope, joy, and achievement. But it was a fragile hope, a hope built on the belief that nothing bad could happen now. She had made it. She had survived. And now she was thriving. She was living proof that anything was possible, even for someone like her. But what Aliana couldn't have known, what no one there could have predicted, was that in a moment of pure innocence and celebration, her world would be shattered. It all began when a group of men appeared outside the store. At first they didn't stand out. Just a few faces among the crowd lingering by the entrance. But as the minutes passed, something about their presence began to feel off. There was an unease in the air. It wasn't obvious at first, but you could sense it, their body language, the way they moved. They didn't belong. The excitement of the day began to shift, as if a cloud was moving across the sky, blocking out the sun. The tension grew slowly, like a storm gathering in the distance, as voices were raised and exchanges became more heated. Some customers began to notice, but they thought it would pass. But it didn't. And then, in the blink of an eye, the first shot rang out. It was loud, louder than anything anyone had heard before. Gunshots in broad daylight. The store was suddenly thrown into chaos. The music, the laughter, the joy, it all stopped in an instant. Customers screamed, ducking for cover as the sound of gunfire echoed off the walls. The noise was deafening. The fear was palpable. People were diving behind shelves, trying to shield themselves and their children from the madness unfolding before them. The sound of breaking glass filled the air as people scrambled to escape. Some were in shock, unable to move, while others pushed past one another in desperate attempts to get out. And in the midst of all this, Aliana Green, who had spent years fighting to make it, fighting to survive, was struck. In the chaos, in the rush to flee, she fell. The store, once filled with the vibrant energy of a community celebration, now stood still, haunted by the silence that followed. The gunshots had stopped, but the damage had already been done. Aliana Green, the rapper who had once been a symbol of strength and survival, was now the latest victim of a city plagued by violence. As emergency services rushed to the scene, people tried to make sense of what had just happened. How had it come to this? The grand opening of a beauty supply store in the heart of Oakland, a place meant to uplift and empower, had turned into a crime scene, and no one there could fully understand how such violence could invade a moment of joy. In those seconds, in that unimaginable chaos, Aliana's life came to an end. And with it, a piece of the community she had fought so hard to build was lost. The question remains, was this a random act of violence, or was there something deeper at play? Was Aliana's involvement in this community more than just business? And could it have led to something darker, something more dangerous than anyone realized? The aftermath was felt across Oakland. The community that had embraced her now mourned her loss, and questions began to surface. Who were the men who started the shooting? Why did they target Aliana? Was it a case of mistaken identity or something more personal? Was she the victim of violence, or had she unknowingly put herself in the line of fire? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, could it have been prevented? What would you have done in that moment? With children and families nearby, how do you think the people inside that store felt as the violence erupted? Share your thoughts below. What would you have done if you were there? And how do you think Aliana felt in those final moments of her life? We want to hear from you. As the sirens blared in the distance and the smoke from the gunfire began to dissipate, the grim reality of what had just unfolded started to settle in. The chaotic scenes inside the store began to turn into something that could only be pieced together through careful investigation. Emergency responders and police swarmed the scene, and soon Oakland's finest began to take control of the situation. But the questions that arose in the aftermath were far from simple. Who shot first? Was Aliana Green the target? Was this just a random act of violence, or was there something more personal at play here? And why would anyone want to harm her in such a public, dramatic fashion? This wasn't just some random shooting, it was a calculated attack in broad daylight, inside a store that was supposed to bring people together. As people poured out of the store in fear and shock, detectives began the painstaking process of piecing together the events of the day. What they found in the hours and days that followed was not what anyone had expected. Surveillance footage from the store's security cameras began to emerge. The video showed everything from the arrival of the suspects to the terrifying moments when the violence broke out. But then, in a shocking twist, the footage revealed something that made investigators pause. Aliana Green, the woman many had believed to be the ultimate victim in this tragedy, was seen reaching into her purse just before the first shots were fired. It was a small, seemingly insignificant action, but it would change the entire direction of the investigation. Aliana, who had spent so much of her life being portrayed as a survivor, now appeared to be involved in the escalation of the violence. Was this self-defense? Did she feel her life was in danger, or was there more to it than that? Could it be that she made the first move, reaching for a weapon, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of anger, or perhaps even with the intention to confront those she saw as a threat. The footage raised more questions than it answered. In those final moments, was Aliana defending herself against men who had already made a move? Or was something else at play? It was a moment of pure tension, one that could be interpreted in many different ways. Some would argue that she acted out of instinct, driven by the environment of violence and danger that she grew up in. Others might suggest that in reaching for her purse, she escalated the situation, something that could have been avoided had she not acted first. The investigation continued, and with it came more revelations. Police soon discovered the identities of the suspects involved in the shooting. Two men, Dominic Gates and Richard James Romano, both known in Oakland's underground music scene. Gates, a local rapper with connections to Aliana's community, and Romano, a man with a violent past. Each had their own story, and each played a role in the escalating violence that led to Aliana's death. But was this a random confrontation, or did their involvement with Aliana run deeper? Had there been prior tensions between her and the suspects that only now were beginning to surface? As the investigators worked tirelessly to make sense of what had happened, one thing became abundantly clear. This was no simple case of a robbery gone wrong. This was far more complicated. It was a web of relationships, a tangled mess of personal history, professional rivalries, and most disturbingly, lies. Aliana had spent years building a reputation based on survival and self-defense, but now, it seemed that the very narrative she had created might have contributed to her own demise. With new footage, witness statements, and forensics evidence on the table, the truth was starting to reveal itself. But it wasn't going to be as simple as determining who pulled the trigger first. This wasn't just about who was responsible for the shooting, it was about what had led to it. It was about the pressure, the lies, and the fear that had built up in Aliana's life, culminating in that fateful moment. Was she justified in what she did? Did she have any other choice? Or did her actions provoke the violence that ended her life? Do you believe Aliana was justified in what she did, or did she escalate the situation? Let us know what you think about her actions in the comments. Could she have avoided this tragedy, or was this the only way it could have ended? As the investigation moved forward, more information came to light about the circumstances of the shooting. Surveillance footage and witness testimony painted a picture of a chaotic, heated confrontation outside the store before the violence erupted. Some witnesses suggested that Aliana may have been the one to escalate the situation, reaching into her purse first and pulling out a weapon. Was it an act of self-defense as she had always claimed? Or was she acting out of fear, anger, or something more complicated? The complexity of the case left the community divided. Many fans stood by Aliana, insisting that she had been justified in her actions, that she had been a woman trying to protect herself in a dangerous world. But others were less sure. Could a woman who had spent so much of her career building a narrative of survival and strength really have been the one who sparked the violence that ended her life? The legal ramifications were equally confusing. Dominic Gates and Richard Romano both faced serious charges, including murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and illegal firearm possession. Yet, the more investigators uncovered, the more complicated the case became. Was this a case of self-defense gone wrong, or was it something darker? A retaliation, a power struggle within Oakland's underground rap scene, or even a betrayal of the very community that had supported her? The legal system's response to the case was equally complex. Both suspects, Gates and Romano, were offered plea deals that would see the murder charges dropped in exchange for guilty pleas on lesser charges, like felony gun possession. Many in the community felt the plea deals were injustice, that the full weight of the law wasn't being applied to those responsible for her death. How could the man who allegedly took her life not face the maximum penalty? The fallout from Aliana's death spread far beyond just her fans and family. It rippled through the entire Oakland community. People began to ask themselves uncomfortable questions. Had Aliana's fabricated narrative about her abusive past played a role in her death? Could she have avoided the violence if she hadn't built a career around an exaggerated version of her life? Was the price of fame too high, especially in a city like Oakland, where credibility in the streets was everything? As rumors swirled, her fans were forced to confront the possibility that Aliana had been living a lie. What did this mean for the women and men who had looked up to her as a symbol of strength and survival? For those who had used her music to cope with their own struggles, how would they now reconcile the person they believed her to be with the truth that was now unfolding before them? At the same time, the tragedy of Aliana's death also underscored the deep-seated issues facing Oakland. Issues of violence, of gun culture, and of a generation of young people trying to escape the harsh realities of their environment. Aliana had tried to do so, to rise above and to build a future. But in the end, her story was as tragic as many others in her community. A bright light snuffed out too soon, in a city defined by its struggle to survive. As the community mourned, they also looked inward. Could Aliana's rise and fall teach them something? Could the violence that claimed her life be prevented in the future? Or was it just another example of how the system, whether it's the streets, the music industry, or the legal system, fails to protect the very people who fight to make a difference? And perhaps the most difficult question of all, did she bring this on herself? Was Aliana, in the end, her own worst enemy? Was justice served in this case? Could things have ended differently if Aliana hadn't built a life on lies? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Was Aliana a victim, or did her own actions lead to her tragic end? Aliana Green's tragic death is a stark and painful reminder of the cost of fame, the price we pay when we live a life built on lies. In today's world, where authenticity is everything, the pressure to create a compelling story to stay relevant can push someone to unimaginable extremes. Aliana Green, also known as Tan de God, started with nothing but a dream to escape her circumstances. She rose through sheer determination, using her past as fuel to propel herself forward. But in the quest to become more than just another rapper, she built a persona, a narrative of survival, strength, and self-defense. Unfortunately, that persona, woven together with the pain of her experiences, came at a cost. In the end, the very story she told to elevate herself became the trap that led to her downfall. Fame has its price. And in Aliana's case, it was her very life. Her fabricated tale about killing her ex to protect herself was so powerful, it became her identity, an identity that, when cracked open, revealed the truth behind the curtain. The truth, that the very things she claimed to have survived were, in fact, exaggerated or even made up. And when the truth caught up with her, it came crashing down in a way that no one could have predicted. But what happens when you live a life based on lies? What happens when you sacrifice your truth in order to fit into a mold of what others expect you to be? In Aliana's case, it cost her everything. Her career, her reputation, her future. All built on something that ultimately couldn't stand the test of reality. In the end, Aliana was a victim of her own ambition, a tragic reminder of how dangerous it can be to weave a false narrative to gain fame. The very story that could have inspired so many was the one that led to her tragic end. Could it have been avoided? Could she have found a way to embrace the truth without sacrificing her life for the image she created? What can we learn from this story? Aliana's tale teaches us the importance of staying true to ourselves and not letting the pressures of fame, success, or societal expectations make us lose sight of who we really are. It's a reminder that the world might reward lies with fame and success, but it will never protect us from the consequences when those lies catch up to us. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think twice about the price of fame, share it with your friends and family. Let them learn from Aliana's mistakes, and let's start a conversation about authenticity, truth, and the cost of living a life built on lies. Before we close, if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more stories that challenge everything you think you know. And turn on the bell notification so you'll be the first to know when our next story drops. If you're still not ready to subscribe, that's okay, but let us know why in the comments. Was Aliana's story one of survival, or did she bring this on herself? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay tuned, stay true, and always remember, the truth is worth more than the fame.